I want to welcome now Hillary Shelton. He's director of the NAACP's Washington Bureau. In his capacity, Hillary's responsible for advocating on crucial issues like ending racial profiling, voter rights protection, and a host of civil rights enforcement and expansion and protection issues. He received a number of awards and recognitions for his dedication to civil rights. He's played an integral role in the passage of the National Voter Registration Act, the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act, and the Help America Vote Act. Mr. Shelton has an in-depth knowledge of the laws that will affect voters this election. Thanks for joining us, Hillary.
Jim, it's great to be with you.
Listen, this election is so historic in many ways for African Americans. I'm reading the press and I'm getting quite emotional as I see these older folks going out and voting, early voting, because this vote is so precious to them. But there's also been some damage done in ways subtle and not so subtle. The question of race has been used going back to the primaries, and it's created a lot of hate, a lot of anger. I'm looking at some of the rallies and some of the things being said at the rallies, and it concerns me. How concerned are you about the longer-term impact of this? Do you think that if Barack Obama wins, the win will end up assuaging the hate, or will it cause the hate to grow?
Well, as you know, the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization that doesn't endorse candidates or political parties. But certainly as we watch the historic events around an African-American man first getting the confirmation as the candidate to run for a major political party, and then watch him go through the process, the concerns for us are multi-leveled. First, making sure that anyone that seeks any political office is treated fairly. They're not scapegoated because of race or other issues and concerns. And certainly also in our historic role, making sure that all Americans and African Americans as well, of course, are able to register, become educated on the issues, vote a ballot of their own free will, and indeed have that vote protected so they can carry forward. So we talk about the broader issues of what happens beyond that, what happens after the election. As we've seen the monumental movement in which an African-American man is able to secure, quite frankly, more white votes in the United States of America than anything else, that very well is very heartening in many ways. So we're very glad to see what's going on. But we're also seeing some of the old remnants of good old-fashioned U.S. bigotry and racism, quite frankly, coming forward as well. Unfortunately, some of the obvious issues are the two skinheads from Tennessee that were caught, that were planning to kill massive numbers of African Americans and then assassinate Barack Obama as well. Throughout this process, raises major concerns about how we still have some of those remnants with us. As we've seen the race card being played in the most obnoxious kinds of way, inferring that because Barack Obama has the name that he has, that somehow or another he might be some kind of a terrorist, and trying to tie him to domestic terrorism, and then continuing to repeat his middle name, Hussein, raises other issues along those lines as well, that indeed they're playing on Americans' fears. And it's sad to see in a time of crisis in our country when real ideas, strategies, and solutions are what should be on the table being discussed. We have candidates pointing at each other saying, no, you're the reason Americans ought to be fearful because of your race, your ethnicity, or any ties to some religious affiliations.
There's something interesting about this, though, something different because of the person of Barack Obama. One is obviously the name, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but the other is the fact that he's Harvard educated,
sure.
Harvard Law Review president, an elected official of some standing, and therefore the charge, again, early on in the Democratic primary was he's elitist.
Yes.
He's different than us. Somebody said at one point that it was just a nicer way of saying he's uppity. He doesn't know his place.
Sure.
I remember early on, it was interesting, in the beginning, there was the thought that African Americans would not embrace him, that he wasn't black enough. How is it playing out in the African American community as they look at these charges of the elitism, different than us, not quite the same as us? Is he viewed as part of the community at this point?
No, absolutely. As a matter of fact, most people just needed to get to know who Barack Obama was, is how it seemed to play out. I mean, as you know, Hillary Clinton was polling higher than Barack Obama because the African American community knew Hillary Clinton very well. They'd known of her great work in the communities, her great work back in Arkansas as the First Lady, and the leadership that she's provided on Capitol Hill on key issues important to us like racial profiling, issues of education equity, health care disparities. Those issues were very much who she was and who she was known to be by the community. As such, the African American community needed to get to know who Barack Obama was. I think it's a great testament to the community that they wanted to get to know him before they embraced him. We've had other people in African American skin, as we say, come forward saying they will protect our interests. But very well, one of the prime examples sits on the Supreme Court now, that indeed he has voted against most of the very issues and concerns of the community. So it's not surprising that the community wanted to get to know them. But as they have, they've gotten to know that he does come from the community in many ways. Though he was born in Hawaii, when he moved to the United States, he went to Chicago and worked as a community organizer. Sadly, even the opposition wanted to suggest somehow a role as important to many of our communities as community organizers should somehow be belittled. So they played on that as well. But so he's lived in the community, he's worked in the community, he's worked for the community. All those issues came out as they got to know him better, as he moved across the country doing events, doing debates and other things. But let me say this about Barack Obama as well. Now, again, we don't endorse anyone, but I think it's a testament to him that when he was first elected to the U.S. Senate, I had a meeting with him as the chief lobbyist for the NAACP to talk about our agenda. And the first thing he said to me was that, Hillary, look, count on me. Those are issues I worked on as a state legislator. They're issues that are part of my priorities as a U.S. Senator. Count on me to do that. But I want you to do me a favor. I want to be involved in the strategy. I want to understand how we move forward and help actually craft that strategy to make sure we implement these policies because they're important to me.
Let me tell the folks out there, if you want to get in the conversation, give us a call at 202-842-5056. If you're calling from overseas, that's 001-202-842-5056. Here in the U.S., it's 1-800-528-2090. Voter registration is through the roof. And
Absolutely.
Early voting is happening in relatively significant numbers as well, but people are still worried about Election Day, about turnout being big and lines being long and frustration growing, and also about voter fraud and the counts not being right. How worried are you, and are protections in place? Is this election going to go smoothly, or are we going to have a repeat of 2000 or 2004 even in Ohio?
Well, things are not going smoothly. We're very concerned. We thank God, quite frankly, that we do have early voting going on because we're getting the opportunity to test these systems and see that many of them are failing us. So very well, we are concerned. The NAACP sent a letter to every chief election official in every state in the country, laying out a number of issues about making sure adequate machines are available, making sure we don't have the kind of mistakes we had in 2000 and 2004, where for some reason in places like Ohio, key battleground states, in the African American community, we had people standing in line for 6 to 8 hours just trying to vote, those who could stay. But very well, many couldn't, so we lost a lot of people. We're having problems now with erroneous purging of rolls. We're seeing that as well. Because of the mortgage crisis and the foreclosure crisis across the country, there are even officials actually purging people from the rolls because they just lost their homes, a double whammy in many ways. So we've had to involve ourselves in negotiations with local officials in Indiana and other places to address those concerns. We want people to work hard to make sure that they vote early, make sure that they're there to vote on time, understand what your rights are, and if you have a problem, the NAACP has set up a network along with some of our other civil rights friends that you can call at phone number 866-OUR-VOTE, OURVOTE, and talk to an expert, a lawyer, at the other end of the line that will help deploy support for them on the ground.